you know, probably all of these candidates are quite qualified, and so it's going to be a fit, a comfort level that the justice has with the law clerk.
Is it political? They hire along political lines?
See the rest of this discussion in the C-SPAN video library. Live now as the U.S. House is about to gavel in. Members beginning the week with morning hour. It's a time set aside for short speeches, and we're expecting to hear about the government shutdown, of course, now in its second week. Live coverage here on C-SPAN.
The House will be in order. The chair lays before the House a communication from the Speaker.
The Speaker's Rooms, Washington, D.C., October 7, 2013. I hereby appoint the Honorable George Holding to act as Speaker pro tempore on this day. Signed, John A. Boehner, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Pursuant to the order of the House of January 3, 2013, the Chair will now recognize members from lists submitted by the majority and minority leaders for morning hour debate. The Chair will alternate recognition between the parties, with each party limited to 1 hour and each member other than the majority and minority leaders and the minority whip limited to 5 minutes each. But in no event shall debate continue beyond 1:50 p.m. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Brooks, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, the Band of Brothers episode, Why We Fight, reminds me of an experience my father, Jack Brooks, shared with me. At age 23, Dad was a combat engineer in General Patton's Army. Near war's end, Dad was ordered to help at a German concentration camp. Dad and his fellow soldiers saw human bodies decomposing and stacked like cordwood, 5 and 6 feet high, with lime sprinkled on them to retard the spread of disease. Those concentration camps helped my dad and America understand why we fought in Europe. Today, Washington is in an epic political battle that will affect America's future for decades and centuries to come. Some see a fight between Republicans and Democrats. I see a fight between those who are financially responsible and those who are not. Between those who have the understanding and backbone needed to prevent an American bankruptcy and those who do not. Why do I fight? I fight for America's children and grandchildren. I fight for America's future. President Obama's 5 deficits have averaged $1 trillion per year, the worst in history. America soon will blow through the $17 trillion debt mark, the worst in history. Mr. Speaker, it is challenging to grasp trillion-dollar deficits and a $17 trillion debt. Let me simplify. In each of the last 5 years, the federal government borrowed 20 to 30% of its operational costs. How many American families or businesses could avoid bankruptcy if, year after year, 20 to 30% of what they spent was borrowed money? Not many and not for long. Economic principles don't care if you are a family, a business, or a country. If you borrow more than you can pay back, you go bankrupt. America has been warned of the consequences of financial irresponsibility. Greece is further down the debt path than America. Greece's unemployment rate is 27%, worse than any year in America's Great Depression. Earlier this year, Cyprus confiscated as much as 60% of their citizens' savings and checking accounts. The Detroit and Stockton municipal bankruptcies risk retirees losing their pensions. President Obama's former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Mike O'Mullen, warned Congress that America's greatest national security threat is not Iran, not al-Qaeda, not China, not Russia. It is our debt. Admiral Mullen is prophetic. In recent history, no enemy has done as much damage to America's military and national security as have debt and sequestration. President Obama's Comptroller General, Gene Dodaro, warned Congress and the White House earlier this year that America's deficits and debt are unsustainable. Which brings us to today's fight involving a government shutdown, debt ceilings, and socialized medicine. No question, a government shutdown hampers the economy. Between 1976 and 1995, there were 17 government shutdowns. Yet, America's economy boomed in the 1980s and 1990s. Shutdowns can be overcome. No question, Not raising the debt ceiling poses economic risk. No one knows for sure how much risk because America's never crossed this threshold before. Whatever it is, it can be overcome. Knowing these risks, why do I fight over funding bills, the debt ceiling, and socialized medicine? Because too many Washington politicians pander to next election voters without caring one twit about America's future. Because appropriations bills, continuing resolutions, the debt ceiling and the like are the only leverage I have to cajole financially irresponsible Washington politicians into doing what must be done to prevent an American bankruptcy. Because, as bad as government shutdown and debt ceiling risks may be, they are relatively inconsequential compared to the economic devastation resulting from an American bankruptcy. Think about the chaos and hardship that will ensue if America has no national defense, no FBI, CIA, or DEA, no Social Security, Medicaid, or Medicare, no NASA, no justice system, because an American bankruptcy has deprived us of the money needed to pay for them. Why do I fight? I fight to minimize the risk of America suffering a debilitating bankruptcy that can destroy the America it took our ancestors centuries to build. Mr. Speaker, it is my duty to use any tools I can to win that fight, because this is one fight America cannot afford to lose. That is why I fight. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, for 5 minutes. Without objection.
Well, Mr. Speaker, this will be a short 5-minute, indeed a short 1 minute, because it all can be said in a very few words. Yesterday, the Speaker said there are not enough votes in the House to pass a clean bill to fund the government and end the shutdown. There's one clear way to find out, Mr. Speaker. Let us vote on the floor of the House. On Saturday, 195 of us Democrats sent a letter to the Speaker saying we're willing to vote yes, and the reports are also 22 Republicans at least are ready to vote yes. That's a majority. There are enough votes to end the shutdown. And, Mr. Speaker, if you don't believe it, let us vote. I yield back.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Connecticut, Mr. Courtney, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today marks day 7 since the rollout of the health care exchanges under the Affordable Care Act. Again, listening to the hysterical rhetoric from the majority party in the House, you would think, again, that America's basic freedoms and economy would be in ruins after day 7. And in fact, there have been some problems in terms of some of the accessing through the database that was set up. Part of the problem was the fact that millions of Americans, far more than anyone expected, even the most ardent supporters of the law, have swamped the system, which, if you think about it, I think speaks volumes about the fact that there is a tremendous need out there for this affordable care, which, again, the law, I think, made a historic step in terms of advancing it. I am proud of the fact that coming from the state of Connecticut, which, again, is one of the states that did not stonewall the legislation, Governor Malloy moved forward as quickly as possible and set up a system that was actually ready last week to deal with the onslaught of emails and calls into the call centers. As of Friday, they tallied over 100,000 contacts that came into the system. Again, they enrolled actually over 1,000 people, even though, again, coverage doesn't even begin until January. And so for a lot of people, again, the need to enroll right away doesn't exist right now because you have to actually write a check if you're going to enroll this early. But nonetheless, still 1,000 people have already signed up. And as I said, 100,000 were able to contact the system and interact with it with little or no problem. First of all, I would like to just, again, congratulate Lieutenant Governor Nancy Wyman, again, who's been sort of shepherding and quarterbacking this process over the last few months or so, again, to make sure that Connecticut's system was ready. And I wanted to share, again, a couple of the stories of individuals who contacted the Connecticut Health Exchange over the last week or so to describe their experiences. Again, there was a 48-year-old Ellie Banos who said that she was pleased to be one step closer to enrolling in health insurance. The New Britain woman who spent the entire afternoon at the health center going through her options has been without coverage for a year and a half due to a layoff. She said that she's been holding her breath and thanking God every day that I don't get sick or get into a car accident. She was excited to learn that she could get good individual coverage for about $70 to $200 a month, or possibly even qualify for expanded Medicaid coverage. I had a conversation in an email with a woman from Norwich who was a 50-year-old self-employed individual who, again, said to me that I currently pay $980 a month for coverage for myself. I have a rare pre-existing condition known as trigeminal neuralgia, which is treated by medication and 4 annual visits to my doctor. For this, I am considered, quote, a heavy utilizer. My condition interferes with my ability to earn, and right now what she's paying is on par with her mortgage payment. After speaking with my insurance agent, I found out that my premiums under the Affordable Care Act will be cut to $440 a month. When I spoke to her on the phone the other day, she said when her agent called her and gave her this news, she did a happy dance in her office, knowing that her health insurance premiums were going to be cut in half. Again, a 50-year-old working individual who is now paying $980 a month is seeing her health insurance bill cut in half because of the health care exchange. Again, she's one of these people who've contacted the system, but she hasn't enrolled yet. But she will, believe me. And again, she cannot believe that we're at a point right now where there is a concerted, intentional effort to shut the government down in an effort to deny her, somebody who, again, has a pre-existing conditions, access to a smarter, more rational marketplace than the one that exists today. Again, the stories go on and on. I have a letter from an individual who actually wrote to the New York Times talking about the fact that on day one there was reports about how terrible the system is. And she said, I tried to sign up. I had absolutely no difficulty getting all the answers I needed and all the forms to fill out on the very first try. The entire process was simple, direct, and easy to follow. I don't know, please don't forget all of us who, while maybe not newsworthy, are a large part of the equation. Her name is Hugh Lindsay from Norwalk, Connecticut. So again, the folks at the Health Care Exchange who've been planning and preparing for months have demonstrated that, again, that demand can be met if you, again, have the right planning in place, and that when people actually have a chance to get past all the nonsense that is thrown around out there about the end of American freedom and actually see that they can buy private health insurance plans. Again, Connecticut offers 3 private health insurance plans, Anthem Blue Cross, Connecticut, and Healthy Connecticut. The system will work, and that's why we must keep this government open and not buckle to the folks who want to just repeal and defund the Affordable Care Act. I yield back.
The chair recognizes the gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, for 5 minutes.
Has unanimous consent to address the House.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning. I thought it was important to come as soon as I arrived after 24 hours in my district, which after voting to restore the payment and compensation to our federal employees, some 800,000 plus who are now laid off, which means that Americans are not receiving vital services, I wanted to go home for a moment to be able to interact with my constituents, and in that period of time, I met doctors, I met carpenters and millwrights, I spoke to those in the arts community, I commemorated the 70th anniversary of Catholic Charities, had a Mass at Sacred Heart Cathedral, listened to our Cardinal talk with great faith, the Cardinal of our community, Houston Galveston Diocese, and the Cardinal that is named by the previous Pope, who now resides in our community, who gave us the words, "The just live by faith." And I indicated that I would come back to let this body know that the people who are being affected are not Republicans or Democrats or Green Party or Independents or any other definition other than Americans. And I was overwhelmed by those who came up to me and indicated, from airline pilots, that negotiation and interaction is important, but don't break on the issue of the Affordable Care Act and getting this government open. They understand it. These are people who are being impacted, like the workers today of an aircraft company in Connecticut that laying off 2,000 people, the Pentagon contractor that will soon be laying off thousands of people, the tax deadline for those who haven't filed coming up on October 15th, needing IRS workers to help them with issues that they have in terms of filing their tax forms, or even the federal courts who will be assessing on October 15th whether or not they can keep their doors open for the moving of justice in this nation. And so I think it is extremely important that whatever is tying you up, whatever is keeping you from looking at the common good, and I would offer to say to the American people, everyone knows that we are not Greece. We wish the best for the people of Greece. But America is the richest country in the world, $4 trillion in economy, and a country that is looked to from all around the world. Our economy is bigger than the European Union. That means countries like Spain and Germany, France, England, all of those members who as well are our allies but look to America. How shameful it is for someone to be held and, if you will, tied up by their own individual personal interests. One would ask if the Founding Fathers, as imperfect as America was as she began, if the Founding Fathers that came from the 13 colonies and various districts and probably interests had held to those specialized interests, would we have created a nation that started out by saying we organized to create a more perfect union, albeit that there were groups of populations that did not have dignity and justice and citizenship at that time, something that I could look back in bitterness. But I do not, because this is the greatest nation in the world, but we are not showing ourselves that way. It is not the truth to suggest that there are not enough voters, members of Congress, that would vote right now today to open this government. It's something called a continuing resolution, but it's a bill that you put on the floor that has been passed already by Republicans and Democrats in the United States Senate. This is not an idea of anyone over another person. Republican and Democratic senators have already voted for this clean bill that we could vote on today. We have martial law. What that means, and my colleagues know what it means, is that you can put a bill on in just minutes. So rather than deciding amongst your children which ones to feed, which is the approach that my Republican friends and leadership are doing, squeezing out one little skinny bill versus another, squeezing out bills that leave out the FAA inspectors, leave out ICE that deals with immigration, leave out those who are dealing with young people who are undocumented, leave out those who are helping young couples who want to get a home with a mortgage processing. Who knows whose home is going to be impacted by the heavy rains that are up and down the East Coast? Who may need federal assistance? All of that is being dumbed down, lost, because we have not opened the government. I come today, Mr. Speaker, to ask all of us to turn to our American card and hold up the American card, I am an American, and vote to open this government right now. I yield back.
Gentlelady's time has expired. Pursuant to Clause 12, Section A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess until 2 p.m. today.
So the House is now in recess. They'll return at 2 Eastern for 1-minute speeches on any topic, with remarks also expected on the